In 1967, the Nabludenia Sever program, Observation North, was closed. All film was destroyed. All participants signed non-disclosure agreements. The official reason for closure, stated in the administrative record, the subject of observation ceased to appear. This is not true. The subject did not cease to appear. The program closed because it understood in its final months that the subject had always been there. The cameras simply could not see it, and the question the program could not answer, the question that made the administrative record choose a comfortable lie over an accurate one, was whether the subject's invisibility to optical instrumentation was a property of the subject or a property of cameras. The answer the program arrived at, after 6 years of attempting to photograph something that 34 of its personnel had seen with their own eyes, is in the final report. I will tell you what it says. But first I need to tell you how I found this file. I was systematizing the catalog of Soviet military photographic laboratory archives, a project that required cross-referencing equipment requisitions, film stock orders, and processing logs across several regional facilities. One catalog number in a Murmansk laboratory inventory did not fit the standard format used by every other entry in the registry. The format deviation was small, a prefix digit that should not have been there, the kind of error that is not an error but a deliberate marker for someone who knows the marking system. I pulled the entry. The entry led to a file number. The file number led here. There was no personal reason. There was a number in the wrong format, and numbers in the wrong format are what archivists investigate. In those days, the Soviet state kept meticulous records of everything. Every photograph, every observation, every piece of equipment. Nothing was supposed to disappear. Today, your digital footprint is just as permanent. Every search, every click, every location tracked and stored. But unlike the Soviet archives, you have a choice. NordVPN encrypts your internet traffic and keeps your identity hidden from surveillance. Check the link in the pinned comment for an exclusive deal. The Observation North program was established in August 1961 under the administrative authority of a scientific division attached to the Northern Fleet. Its founding documents describe a systematic optical survey of the Kola Peninsula tundra region, with emphasis on documenting unusual atmospheric and geographical phenomena using photographic and film equipment. The framing is scientific, and the equipment requisitions are consistent with a serious documentary photography effort. High-resolution cameras, specialized film stocks, processing facilities at 3 regional locations. The founding documents do not describe what the program was actually trying to photograph. That is in a supplementary brief attached to the program director's personal file, classified at a higher level than the main records, accessible through the clearance I obtained 3 months ago for a different project. The brief states,
Subject has been intermittently observed by military personnel at 11 separate locations across the peninsula since 1953. Nature of subject unknown. Photographic documentation required.
Intermittently observed since 1953, 8 years before the program was established. 11 separate locations, 11 separate sets of observers, over 8 years, enough sightings to justify 6 years of systematic photographic effort. Enough sightings for the Northern Fleet to decide that documentation was more important than explanation. The prior observer reports, 11 incident reports filed between 1953 and 1961 by military and scientific personnel working in the Kola region, are attached to the program's founding file as an evidence annex. They describe the same form at different locations in different seasons, seen by people who had no knowledge of each other's sightings. A naval officer at a coastal monitoring station in 1953, a geological survey team in 1955, a military cartographer working alone in 1957, a pair of research biologists in 1959. Each report describes consistent characteristics. A form visible to the naked eye at distances ranging from a few hundred meters to over a kilometer, present for durations between a few minutes and over an hour, not responsive to attempts to approach or signal, and not captured by any photographic attempt. 3 of the 11 prior observers had cameras. All 3 photographed what they saw. None of their photographs showed anything but landscape. 8 years of prior sightings, consistent across independent observers, none documented optically. The program was established to solve a problem that had existed for 8 years before anyone thought to approach it systematically. What the program added was methodology. What the methodology confirmed, over 6 years of systematic effort, was that the problem did not yield to methodology, and that the form's continued presence throughout the program's operation was not incidental to that failure. The program's chief photographer was a man named Dmitry Mironov. He found out on his 7th day. His working journal from September 1961, his second week in the field, reads,
I want to describe what happened yesterday with as much technical precision as I can, because I am a photographer, and technical precision is how I understand things. And what happened yesterday is something I need to understand. I was at position 4, northeast exposure, shooting the tundra horizon for atmospheric documentation as per protocol. Conditions: overcast, diffuse light, no direct sun, good visibility to approximately 8 kilometers. I was shooting with the standard long focus lens, 60mm Ilford FP3 film, exposure determined by meter. At approximately 1540 hours I saw, at a distance I estimated as 600 to 800 meters, a form. I want to be precise about the word form because I am resisting more specific words. It was not an animal. The proportions were wrong for anything in my field reference. It was not a geological feature. I had been shooting this horizon for 4 days, and it was not there before. It was there, in the field of view, clearly visible, for approximately 11 minutes. I shot 42 frames. I shot the form directly. I aimed the camera at the position where the form was standing, and I pressed the shutter 42 times. I developed the film last night. The form is not on any of the 42 frames. The horizon is correct. The atmospheric conditions are correctly rendered. The focal length and exposure produce the resolution to show objects at that distance clearly. There is nothing at the position where I saw the form. I have been a photographer for 12 years. I understand my equipment. The equipment was functioning. The form was there. The form is not on the film. I do not have a technical explanation for this. I am going to position 4 again tomorrow.
He went to position 4 again, and the next day, and for 6 years, across 11 observation positions, 3,047 photographic sessions, and 412 rolls of developed film, he did not capture the form on a single frame. His journal from year 4 of the program, 1965, after 3 years of 0 captures, contains an entry that I have read many times, because it marks the moment when his technical approach began to fracture under the weight of what he had not been able to document. He wrote in his journal,
3 years of shooting a thing I can see and cannot photograph. I have been thinking over the last month about a different question than the one I started with. I started with, why can't I capture it on film? That is the photographer's question. The question I am now asking is different. Why does it stay if a thing does not want to be photographed? The simple resolution is to leave, to go somewhere. There are no photographers. This form has not left. It has been at these 11 positions intermittently for at least 12 years before this program was established. The prior observer reports confirm this. I have been here for 3 years with a camera, photographing it every time I can see it, and it has remained in the area. It attends my sessions. It appears when I'm shooting. I'm beginning to believe that I have been thinking about this situation entirely backwards. I have been assuming it tolerates the photography. I'm now wondering if it seeks it out. If what draws it to my sessions is not indifference to my presence, but interest in it, in what I'm doing, in the act of documentation itself. I cannot photograph it. I do not know if it knows this. I do not know if it matters to it whether I can photograph it or not. What I know is that it keeps appearing in front of my camera. 3 years, 12 positions. It has not left. Whatever this thing is, it is interested in being here while I am here with a camera. I do not know what to do with this except keep shooting.
Keep shooting. He kept shooting for 3 more years, producing 3,000 frames of an object whose interest in being photographed is visible in every session log and absent from every frame of film. 34 other program personnel saw it over those 6 years. They saw it at different positions, in different light conditions at different times of year. Their observation reports describe a consistent set of characteristics. A form, visible to the naked eye, that did not appear in any optical instrument, not cameras, not binoculars, not rangefinders, not any glass-mediated viewing device. It was visible only to the unaugmented human eye. When observers looked through their cameras or field glasses at the position where the form stood, they saw nothing. When they lowered their instruments and looked directly, the form was there. The program spent 2 years attempting to explain this technically. Film sensitivity, lens resolution, exposure timing, atmospheric interference. Every photographic variable was tested and adjusted. When the technical explanations ran out, they brought in a physicist. Dr. Yelena Semyonova, 43 years old, from the Institute of Optics in Leningrad, joined the program in 1963 and spent the next 3 years attempting to characterize the physical properties of something that would not interact with light in a way that any camera could record. Her analysis is the most technically rigorous document in the file, and also the most philosophically disturbing, because it arrives, by careful scientific steps, at a conclusion that her discipline does not have a category for. Her report reads, in its central section, I have investigated every optical mechanism by which a physical object might fail to appear in photographic emulsion while remaining visible to the human eye. These mechanisms exist. They include objects whose surface absorbs light at frequencies outside the sensitivity range of the film, objects moving at speeds that exceed the shutter's temporal resolution, objects that emit or reflect light at angles that produce image blur beyond the resolution threshold. I have tested each of these mechanisms against the program's documentation and observation records. None of them account for the data. The form is not infrared absorbing. Human visual perception does not extend to the infrared range, so an object invisible in the visible range would also be invisible to observers. The form is not moving at high speed. Observer reports describe a stationary or slowly moving object held in the visual field for durations of up to 20 minutes. The form does not produce directional reflection. Observers report seeing it from multiple angles simultaneously without coordination. I am left with a finding I want to state precisely. The form is not optically invisible. The form is present in the light that reaches the observation positions. Something in that light carries the information of the form's presence. The human visual system extracts this information. Photographic emulsion does not. This is not a property of the light. It is a property of the processing systems. The human eye and the camera are receiving the same light and producing different outputs. One of them is missing something the other detects. I cannot determine which is detecting correctly and which is not. I am filing this as a finding rather than a conclusion, because the conclusion it implies is outside the boundaries of my discipline. One of them is detecting correctly and the other is not, and she cannot determine which. 6 years of photography producing no images of something that 34 trained observers saw clearly, and the physicist at the end of her analysis is uncertain whether the cameras failed to see it or the humans failed not to. Here's the first contradiction. The program's photographic logs, maintained by Mironov with the precision that characterizes everything he did, document 3,047 photographic sessions across 6 years, 42 to 60 frames per session, approximately 180,000 frames total. Developed, reviewed, cataloged. The form does not appear in any of them. 0 detections by optical instrumentation across 6 years of systematic effort. The program's observer logs, maintained separately by the non-photography personnel whose role was to provide visual confirmation during shooting sessions, document 34 visual contacts across the same period. 34 occasions on which observers, looking at the same scene Mironov was photographing, confirmed the presence of the form, while the photograph showed nothing. 2 systems observing the same scene across the same 6 years, producing different pictures of what was there. The camera said, tundra, horizon, appropriate atmospheric conditions, nothing unusual. The observers said, the form is there, at these coordinates, for this duration, with these characteristics, 34 times. I want to tell you about the moment the program's protocols broke down. I thought Observation North was a documentary failure, a program that had set out to photograph something unusual and had been unable to develop the technical methodology to achieve it. 6 years of effort producing 0 images was a failure of technique, I assumed, however inexplicable the specific nature of the failure. I was wrong. The failure was not technical. The failure was the wrong category for what was happening. Because what the program learned in its 5th year was that the form was not avoiding the cameras. The form was aware of the cameras. The form knew it was being photographed, and the invisibility to film was not a passive property of the form. It was a response, a choice. The evidence for this is in the radio exchange I want to read you now. It was October 19th, 1965. Position 7, Northeast Kola Peninsula. Observer Alexei Korshinov, 34 years old. Military background, 17 months with the program. He was in the field alone, Mironov having been called back to the base station for equipment maintenance. Korshunov was conducting a visual survey, not a photographic session. No camera, just observation, logging the horizon. His radio check-in was scheduled every 30 minutes. At 1400, he checked in normally. At 1430, he did not respond. The radio log from that afternoon reads,
Base to Korshunov. Check-in at 1430. Respond. Over. Base to Korshunov. This is your 1430 check-in. You are 7 minutes overdue. Respond. Over. Base to Korshunov. Korshunov, respond immediately. Over. Base to Korshunov. Korshunov, confirm your status. Over. Base to Korshunov. If you can hear this transmission, press your transmit button twice. Over. Base to Korshunov. Korshunov, over. Korshunov to base. I am here. Over. Base to Korshunov. Korshunov, you have been non-responsive for 22 minutes. Report your status. Over. Korshunov to base. I am at position. Status normal. I was watching something. I could not stop watching it. Over. Base to Korshunov. Describe your observation. Over. Korshunov to base. I cannot describe it. I can tell you it was close. Closer than any previous contact I have logged. I can tell you that when I was watching it, I understood that it knew I was watching. Not suspected. Knew. It was watching me watch it. I cannot describe it further. I want to note one thing for the record. Over. Base to Korshunov. Go ahead. Over. Korshunov to base. It did not leave when I broke contact to respond to you. It is still here. It has been here the entire time we have been talking. Over.
It has been here the entire time we have been talking. The form was present during the radio exchange. Korshunov continued transmitting with the form at close range, visible, watching him watch it, for the duration of a conversation about its presence. The program's response, documented in the program director's log for that evening, was to recall Korshunov immediately and initiate the psychiatric assessment protocol. The technical report filed afterward describes Korshunov's 22 minutes of non-response as a communications equipment malfunction. The communications equipment was examined and found to be functioning normally. The psychiatric assessment was filed in a separate folder at a higher classification level. It describes Korshunov as psychologically stable, and his account is consistent with the observation reports of other program personnel who had achieved close visual contact. It notes one finding that does not appear in any prior assessment, and that I want to read to you from the transcript of his assessment interview. The examining psychiatrist asked Korshunov to describe, to the best of his ability, what he had experienced during the 22 minutes of non-response. His account, given in 3 sessions over 2 days, is as follows.
He had seen the form at close range. His estimate was 70 to 90 meters, the closest any observer had logged. He had been unable to look away, not paralyzed, not compelled by any force he could identify, simply unable to find a reason to look away, in the specific way that you cannot look away from something that is looking directly at you. He described the quality of the attention he received as complete. His word, not threatening, not benign, complete. as though every aspect of his presence was being noted with the same precision he was trying to apply to his own observation of it. He said, "I felt documented." He said this without apparent distress. He said, "I understand now why the camera cannot capture it. The camera has no response to being looked at. When it looks at you the same way it looks at everything else. What you need to see, it is the capacity to know you are being seen. The camera does not have that capacity. I do, and I saw it."
He was asked if he would enter the field again. He said yes without hesitation. He was asked if he was afraid of it.
You are not afraid of something that is paying you that quality of attention. You are grateful.
You are grateful. A military observer, psychologically stable, describing the aftermath of 22 minutes of close-range visual contact with something that documented him completely, using the word grateful. The program was not watching something passive. The program was being watched by something that had decided to be watched back. Here's the second contradiction. The program maintained parallel documentation for each observation event, a technical report filed by the photography team, and a separate experiential report filed by the observing personnel. These were kept in separate folders and reviewed by different supervisory personnel. For the majority of observation events, the two reports agree on the basic facts and differ only in emphasis and interpretation. For the events involving Korshunov, his October 1965 incident and 4 subsequent observations he made in the program's final 18 months, the two reports are not reconcilable. The technical reports describe equipment anomalies, observer inattention, and inconclusive data. The experiential reports describe sustained close-range visual contact, mutual awareness, and one occasion, in March 1966, in which Korshunov noted that the form appeared to respond directly to his written notes, that its behavior changed in a manner correlated with his documentation, as though it could read what he was writing. Two reports of the same observations producing incompatible accounts of the same events. The technical reports describe the equipment. The experiential reports describe the encounter. The equipment reports contain no anomalies. The encounter reports describe something that knew it was being watched and responded to being documented. Here is the third contradiction, the document that should not exist. The program's closure order, dated March 1967, authorized the destruction of all photographic materials. The destruction was certified as complete on April 14, 1967. The certification is signed by the program director and countersigned by 2 witnesses. In the program file behind the destruction certification, there is one envelope. Inside the envelope, one frame of 35mm film, developed undamaged. On the back of the envelope in Mironov's handwriting.
This one I kept. I don't know why. I think you should see it.
I think you should see it. He wrote that to whoever would find the envelope, decades before I found it, knowing the file would eventually be read and knowing the film would eventually be examined. He kept one frame out of the destruction. He did not describe what was on it. He left it for the finding. The frame shows position 7, the northeast horizon of the Kola Peninsula tundra. Overcast light, standard conditions. Technically, the frame is unremarkable. Correct exposure, sharp focus, the kind of image Mironov produced 3,000 times across 6 years. all of which showed nothing but landscape. Semyonova's report describes, in its technical appendix, a method for identifying the form's presence in photographs that appeared to show only landscape. She had developed this method from the indirect evidence, the shadows and light distributions in the frames from the moments when observers confirmed visual contact. Her analysis was that the form, while not appearing in standard photographic emulsion, left a secondary signature, a distribution of shadow and highlight that did not correspond to the light sources present in the image. Not the form itself, the form's effect on the light around it, the way a presence disturbs the light even when the presence is invisible. I applied her method to the frame Mironov kept. The method requires measuring the shadow distribution in the image against the known light sources, the position of the sun, the cloud cover, the reflective properties of the tundra surface. Where the measured shadows do not correspond to the modeled light, something is present that is not otherwise visible. In the frame Mironov kept, there is a region in the middle distance, approximately 600 meters from the camera, consistent with the distances in observer reports, where the shadow distribution does not match the light model. Not a large region, not dramatic, but consistent with Semyonova's description of the form's optical signature, a presence in the light that the emulsion cannot render directly, but whose effect on the surrounding light is measurable if you know how to measure it. The form was in the frame. It was in every frame where observers confirmed visual contact, in the shadows that did not fit the light. 3,000 frames, 6 years of documentation, and the form was present in the light the entire time. Mironov photographed it thousands of times without knowing. The film showed nothing because the film could not show it directly. The shadows showed it to anyone who knew how to read shadows. I have been looking at the frame for 2 hours. The shadow distribution is in the middle distance, in the region Semyonova's method identifies. And there is something in the distribution that her method does not describe. Something I am noting here because I cannot not note it, because accurate documentation is the only obligation I have. The shadow distribution is oriented. It has a direction. The form, as indicated by the shadows, is facing the camera. Not facing away, not facing sideways, facing the lens directly. In a photograph taken during a session when the observer logs show no visual contact, when no one at position 7 was watching in any particular direction, when Mironov had simply aimed the camera at the horizon, as he had aimed it at the horizon 3,000 times before. The form was facing the camera. It was looking into the lens while the lens could not see it. It was oriented toward documentation in a frame that no one intended as documentation of the form. It knew it was being photographed. It had always known it was being photographed. The destruction certification is signed. The film was destroyed. One frame exists because one photographer kept it in an envelope with a note to whoever would eventually read the file. "I think you should see it," he wrote. He was right. I have seen it. I have applied the physicist's method. I have found what the shadows contain. The form is in the middle distance, facing the camera, in a frame that contains no observer, no deliberate documentation of any unusual phenomenon, no awareness from anyone present that the form was there at all. It was there. It has been there since 1953 when the first sightings were reported. It was there through 6 years of systematic photography that could not capture it. It was there when Korshunov stood at position 7 and could not stop watching it. It was there when the program closed and the films were destroyed. It is presumably there now. The program closed because it understood that it had not been observing the form for 6 years. It had been observed for 6 years. The cameras were pointed in the right direction and looking at the wrong thing the entire time. I am going to close this file. I am going to note the catalog deviation that led me here as resolved and the reference number as reconciled. I am going to note that the frame exists and that it is in the file and that I have examined it. I am not going to describe what it contains. That is for the next archivist who finds the file, who applies the method, who looks at the shadows in the middle distance and understands what has been facing the camera since before anyone knew to look. The form has been at those coordinates since 1953. The program that tried to photograph it is gone. The films are destroyed except for one frame in an envelope with a note. Mironov has been dead for however many years have passed. Korshinov is gone. Semyonova is gone. The program director's signature on the destruction order is the last official trace of 6 years of looking at something that was looking back. The middle distance in the frame is where the shadows do not fit the light. That is where it is. That is where it has always been. End of file.